Today, you have heard from our speakers about incredible ways that AI is transforming and refining the way we do our jobs. In medicine, it's helping us document faster, it's helping us move patients through busy emergency departments, and it's helping us predict outcomes that we might not have seen coming. These tools are powerful, and they matter. But they're not the whole story. See, I've been an emergency medicine physician for nearly 2 decades, and I've spent more days than I can count standing at the bedside of patients on the worst day of their lives. So I'm here to talk about something different. I am here to remind you that there are parts of medicine, the most human parts, that no machine can replace. Because being a doctor isn't just about prescribing the right medication or making the correct diagnosis. Sometimes it's about sitting quietly with a family as they say goodbye. It's about noticing the bruises on a child that don't fit the story. It's about seeing the fear in a young woman's eyes who's not allowed to speak for herself. These are the moments when medicine becomes more than just science, it becomes something deeper. These are the moments when presence, judgment, advocacy, and courage make all of the difference. And these are the moments when humanity, not technology, matter most. So let's talk about what AI can do, and just as importantly, let's talk about what AI can't do. Now, to be fair, AI is already changing the way I work. It can help me document the clinical encounter so I spend more time with patients and less time in front of the computer. And it helps me distill years of data from the electronic health record so I can impact the treatments I make today. In a busy emergency department, these tools can be life-saving. But that doesn't mean that AI is practicing medicine, because AI doesn't build trust. It doesn't make a judgment call when the right move isn't obvious, and it doesn't sit across from a scared patient and help them feel safe. So as we race towards a future with ever more powerful algorithms, we need to be clear-eyed about what we are gaining and what we can't afford to lose. And nowhere is that more apparent than at the end of life, when all of the data in the world can't replace human presence. Let me tell you what I mean. When someone dies in the emergency department, there is a moment, often just fleeting, when everything stops. The monitors go quiet. The flurry of voices just moments before shouting out commands like another round of epi, continue compressions, pulse check, fade to silence. And the team that had been so intently focused at the bedside just moments before takes a step back and we pause. We reflect not just on a case, but on a life, often one that we know very little about. When families arrive to the hospital during a resuscitation, we'll often invite them into the room for those final moments. We know that for pediatric deaths, this is especially important for families to see the heroic efforts made to save their child and to start their road of grieving and process what happened. But this invitation takes judgment. It has to be made with care because what families will see is raw. It's not like what they see on TV. As a physician, I have to be able to sense whether families are ready to be there. When families are there, in the moments that follow and the pause that we have, I will often ask them to share something about the person they loved. Because you see, nobody imagines that their final moments will be in a sterile hospital room under fluorescent lights and surrounded by strangers in scrubs. Maybe that's why we reach for something more, something personal. I want to know about this person, and I want the family to know that I cared enough to ask. That's not something AI can do. AI doesn't stand in stillness, doesn't feel the weight of a breathless room, doesn't look at a daughter's face and know whether to speak or just to place a hand on her shoulder. But family can't always be there. Sometimes they arrive at the hospital after the resuscitation is over. Sometimes they choose not to be in the room. And in those moments, the hardest task falls to me. Walking into a quiet space, a room where family is waiting, hoping, and saying the words that will change their lives. There's no script for these moments. We have frameworks, like one called Spikes, that can guide these conversations, but they're just that, a guide. Because there are no exact words to say when a husband looks up to you with searching eyes, or a father won't stop pacing the room because stillness feels too close to the truth. I have to read that room in an instant. How much do they know? How much are they ready to hear? And I watch their faces for comprehension, fear, disbelief, sometimes anger. And when the time is right, I say the words, "He died." Not he's gone or he's no longer with us, because euphemisms don't soften the blow, they just blur it, and families deserve clarity. Afterwards, some want to talk, ask questions. Others don't, and I just sit with them in silence. This is why we choose our words carefully. We know from studies that the way patients are informed or families are informed about a death can shape the way they grieve. So this is why we stay present, and this is why we choose our words. AI might be able to write these words, but it can't carry the weight of them. It doesn't bear witness to a death or to those who are left behind. It doesn't carry that weight. But not all of the most difficult moments come at the end of life or with breaking bad news. Some of the most difficult, the most challenging moments come quietly, not guided by textbook symptoms or lab results, but by a gut feeling that's honed through years of experience. It's about the subtle signs that we notice, the things that don't show up on a screen. Take the young toddler who came in with a minor complaint, but the story was vague and something felt off. When I went to examine him, I noticed some faint bruising along the cartilage of his ear, a place that should never be bruised in a young toddler. I asked the parents about it, and their stories were uncertain. The pattern didn't match the explanation, and I noticed that the child flinched ever so slightly as the parents moved. Nothing is definitive, but everything matters. Or take the young woman who came in with abdominal pain. She didn't say a word, but the man who insisted at staying at her bedside answered all of my questions for her. When I asked him how he knew the patient, he said he was her cousin, but he didn't know her last name. That moment hung heavy, and I asked myself, is this really about abdominal pain, or is this something more dangerous? After nearly 2 decades in the emergency department, I can walk into a room and know in an instant whether someone is sick or in trouble. I don't have to read the triage note. I don't need a rundown of the vital signs. I can tell by the color of their skin, the coolness or the dampness of their touch, the pallor in their eyes. I may not know exactly what is wrong, but I know that something is wrong and I have to act immediately. These moments aren't about data. They're about presence, situational awareness, emotional intelligence, that deeply human sense that something isn't right. AI might help us process information faster, but it doesn't see the fear in someone's eyes, doesn't catch the flicker of hesitation that lasts just a moment too long, or the silence that lingers, doesn't catch the edge in someone's voice. It doesn't whisper, something's wrong. And when our instincts are right, when the fear is real, the diagnosis is devastating, when nothing more can be done, that's when another truth becomes evident. AI might give us the tools we need to do our jobs more efficiently and effectively, but our patients need us to carry the emotional weight of this work. AI doesn't feel the ache of telling a mother her child didn't survive. It doesn't carry home the faces of those it couldn't save. I remember one afternoon, several years into my career, when I had a shift and I pronounced the young man dead. He'd just been recently married. And I remember to this day, this was decades ago, exactly where I sat in that hospital, exactly what those chairs looked like. I remember the cries of his wife. I finished my shift and I came home and I sat on my couch and I just cried. It wasn't the first patient I'd lost. Wasn't the worst case I'd seen. But in that moment, the grief caught up with me, the grief from that case and many before that, and something broke through and I let it. You see, when commercial airline pilots have a near miss or a crash, they are immediately grounded. They're given time to recover, to debrief, to process. In medicine, especially emergency medicine, we don't have a system like that. I may walk out of the trauma bay from a lengthy resuscitation from someone with multiple stab wounds or a father who drowned trying to rescue his child from the ocean, into the next room to see the next patient, often someone who's annoyed with how long they've had to wait to see me. And we delay that opportunity to process or to grieve. But I'm lucky. When I come home to someone who understands. My husband is a firefighter paramedic, and he has seen cases and deaths worse than I have. So when I come home and I say, I had a tough case, I'm sad, I had a patient who died, I don't have to say anything more, and he doesn't ask me to. He can just sit with me, and that too is presence. Because we don't need our doctors to be invulnerable. We need them to be human. So as AI transforms how we deliver care, we can't forget why we deliver it in the first place. Because even at its most powerful, AI is still just a tool. It doesn't navigate moral uncertainty, it doesn't weigh values. It doesn't ask, should we keep going? And it doesn't carry the burden of deciding when it's time to stop. It also doesn't build trust with patients. Sometimes our patients refuse to be admitted to the hospital, even when it's the best thing for their health. At face value, that might seem simple. They just don't want to stay. But when I can sit with them, when I can really hear where they're at, meet them where they're at, it's often something more. Sometimes they have a pet at home, and that's their only living companion. Sometimes their spouse died in that very hospital, and the thought of staying is unbearable. But when I can listen, when I understand, I can help get them the care they need. This isn't something AI does. AI doesn't advocate. It doesn't fight for the patient who's being overlooked. It doesn't push back against a broken system. It doesn't say that's not good enough. That's the role of a physician. That's what we do. And so in a world that's becoming ever more automated, guided by machines, we need human presence more than ever. Patients don't just need answers. They need to be seen. They need to be heard. Sometimes in grief, sometimes in quiet understanding, sometimes with nothing more than eye contact or truth. So while AI might transform how we deliver care, redefine our work, it will never take our place in the moments that matter most. Thank you.